T'uy't'tanat-Cease Wyss, an hasqualawins, haichka. We are at the gateway to our community here, what is known to people as Humulchitsan, Humulchitsan, Humulchitsan. It is the place where the fish roll. The reason for this name is that Humulchitsan sits next to the Capilano estuary. And in the long ago, before there was urbanization here, this very spot was part of the riverbank. In about the 50s, the Cleveland Dam was built, and at that time it redirected the river system to a mile west of here. When that happened, it changed everything in a way that we don't even know that this was once a riverbed. So now Humulchitsan is still where it always was, except that it has filled in that area where the river used to be. And the village has grown by many. And today we are nestled in between the districts of West Vancouver and North Vancouver. I'm standing in front of a welcome figure whose arms are up. And this position is, when we do this, we say that this is the T'uy't'tanat. And T'uy't'tanat means to welcome and to hold our hands up. Often people don't even notice this beautiful welcome figure, but it was put here as a way to acknowledge where you are. And it is the beginning of our journey through the cultural crossings. Haichka. Another change that came into be was recently a pathway was added throughout our community called the Spirit Trail. It's a trail that extends along the North Shore, all along through West Vancouver towards Horseshoe Bay. It's a really positive thing in many ways to have this Spirit Trail here. It was named through public art process, and today it now gives a space for pedestrians, cyclists, people on scooters, joggers. And what it is supposed to encompass is community and to encourage people moving throughout the community. It can pose some problems for our community, the Squamish Ulchamea. And why that is because it travels along an already illegal cutaway that was put in place during the time that Indian agents were mapping out the district of North Vancouver and the district of West Vancouver. Through this work of studying the land and understanding what that means to Indigenous people living here, I came up with the idea of cultural crossings. So we're at a cultural crossing point right here with the Indigenous community and the non-Indigenous community intersecting. And at Matthias Road and Welsh Road, it meets up with the Spirit Trail for the greater community, and it intersects into the Spirit Trail of the Squamish people. And we will explore how that cultural crossing looks and where it intersects and what it means to people traversing these trails. Now I'm standing here in this tiny ecosystem in a very urban setting with huckleberry, red huckleberry, growing out of the roots of a cedar tree. It has rotten cedar and then it morphs into a live cedar tree. Another very important plant in Pacific Northwest Coast technology, and surrounded and encased between the two plants is maple. So where I'm standing, it's miraculous that these three plants would grow together so closely in such an urbanized context next to the Spirit Trail, mainly because it's surrounded by cement and what I call colonized earth, because it has had all of its nutrients stripped from it, but it's been turned into gravel and sand, and it's kind of pushed up against this little section. And yet here is this incredible huckleberry tree, bush, shrub that is about approximately 250 to 300 years old. It is older than the cedar and the maple that are encased around it. The cedar that I'm standing next to is probably about 100 years old, and the maple tree is probably about 40 years old. So although the huckleberry bush is the smallest of the three plants that I'm standing next to, it is the oldest. It is the grandmother of these three plants. It is the sustenance, the food that our families have eaten. I could honestly say I have ancestors that have picked berries from this bush and filled their bellies, cleansed their blood, and raised their iron levels in their bloodstream and their liver for centuries. And the maple tree, even though it's very young, it represents a plant that has warmed the hearth of the fires built in houses of cedar. So these three plants to me are very, very important, very significant and intrinsic to the cultural lifestyles of the Squamish Olchomea and to many Pacific Northwest Coast Indigenous people. So we're now standing at the corner of Iquiquix and Welsh, which is an interesting part of the cultural crossing. When we researched the word Iquiquix to understand what that meant, we discovered that it meant the place where the bears go to eat. It makes a lot of sense to me because, again, we're in what was essentially part of the riverbank, and the bears would come here to eat salmon. And the name Humulchitsun means where the fish roll, which implies that at one time the salmon were so plentiful here that you could walk across the backs of the salmon because there were millions of salmon that would come and go. They would leave as tiny fry. They would return as full-grown salmon, and they would be struggling with each other, rolling over one another to get up the riverbed. So to think about the idea, Iquiquix being the place where the bears come to eat, it makes a lot of sense. And to us, in our minds and our hearts, we still see what these place names mean to us. And this road intersects into part of our community that houses the offices of the people that do the work with all of our people. The health department, Yustawe, and the child and family services, Ayas Munmun, to care for children. So these are really important places culturally where the people that work here, who are predominantly Squamish Slanai, meaning our women, doing all this work for the people, for their families, for the children. And although they come here to work in these offices, the real work happens on the land and in the mountains and in the water, because they do work to create opportunities to bring our children, our youth, our families into cultural journeys like canoe journeys or camping on the land up in our summer villages north of where the town of Squamish is today. And so looking at how we have put our own place names back into the land and to say Ikwikwiks is the place where bears come to eat, at Humulchitson where the fish tumble. It is a very important cultural crossing, and it leads from our community through the illegal cutaway into a cultural space that is sacred and honors all of our humans, all of our members of our community. Haichka. So I'm standing at the entrance of what is considered the Skomish Olchamea Spirit Trail. And this Spirit Trail is by invitation only. So the only way, if you are not a member of this community, to come through here is to ask permission from the people that do sacred work here. It is the gateway to our ceremonial work, our sacred place, and one of the last little vestiges of ancient forest that's left, and is a very tiny pocket. As you can tell, it's a short road. It leads directly to the train yard that is a barrier between this forest and the shoreline that is the entrance to Burrard Inlet. And it is also part of what was once the riverbank and the riverbed of the village of Humulchitson. So when we're looking in here, it is a window into a sacred and secret space of the Skomish Olchamea. The people that come here to do work for themselves and for the community and for anybody that comes here to ask for that help. But it's not a space that you just show up and walk into. And the reason we have a gate is to give that little barrier of personal space. This is our personal bubble here. And is not to say that we don't welcome everybody, but to do the work we do, we need our personal bubble, our personal space, in order to do the prayers, do our sacred ceremonies, do the work that helps to heal our environment, Tisha Tamea, which is Mother Earth, and to honor the ancestors, the grandfathers and the grandmothers. It's a little window into our grandparents' home. Haichka Osiam.